This is OVTV. Be encouraged, be inspired, be blessed. One Voice TV.
Hello once again, Pastors Hank and Brenda, right here, Dallas, Texas, NRB. And we are so thrilled that you joined us today. Listen, God is moving in the earth, and we've got a very special guest that's going to really talk about not just America, but really what is happening the enemy is trying to counter what God wants to do globally. So we've got a very special guest today, and you are in for a treat. So make sure you stay tuned.
Well, we want to welcome Janice Trey from the very well-known, you are the CEO of the Epoch Times. And I'm just going to start off by saying, as we went through this last election cycle, these last 4 crazy years, your stories gave so much hope, and there was so much eye-opening. But Janice, you have an incredible testimony that makes you an expert on the topic that we're about to discuss. So we just want to give you the floor for a few moments to tell your story and why what you're doing is so important for the world right now.
Well, thank you both for having me on your programs. And Epoch Times is publishing in 35 countries, 22 languages. And our Chinese editions is the most widely circulated Chinese language paper outside China. And people inside China use free gates and ultrasurf to circumvent the Great Firewalls and able to read the contents that you and I read. And it's really important because, as you know, in the totalitarian regimes, information is blocked.
Yes.
And we are giving a voice to the voiceless.
Yes.
And many other media outlets do not cover sensitive topics because they are self-censoring themselves, worry about the press credentials being revoked, and oftentimes it's the self-censorships. Epoch Times, for the past quarter centuries, we've been reporting truth, tradition, and hope. And it's specifically important to report the truth. Let me share with you our organization structures. We are 501c3 nonprofits. So we are only accountable to the subscribers. Our revenue source are primarily from the subscription revenue. So we are accountable to them, and our readers are our stakeholders, unlike some other legacy media, where they may be certain individuals super wealthy and have certain agenda or certain government influence that. Epoch Times is independent, is neutral to report the truth. Another aspect is really important is about traditions. So we sponsor programs that highlight tradition. For example, the Shenyun Performing Arts, we are a proud sponsor since the inception, 2006.
Wow.
So Shenyun is the world's most beautiful, world-class classical Chinese dance with a live orchestra that combined the grandeur of the Western Symphony Orchestra with the distinctive Chinese melodies.
Wow.
And then also have the patented animated backdrops. So think of a movie, a live theater, and live concert, all 3 in one. I have the pleasure to introduce Shenyun to Kate Blanchard. And she took her whole family to see it, and she described it, Shenyun, as an extraordinary experience, exquisitely beautiful. I also have the pleasure to co-host the cast party at the Kennedy Center with Shenyun and Joshua Bell, the violinist.
Wow.
Saw Shenyun, love it, and he even asked for the scores of the 2-string instruments, the Chinese violin. While Shenyun has reached 1 million audience a year and every year brand new production. However, the Chinese Communist Party has been systematically attack Shenyun from a bomb threats to, slash the tires of the bus and all sorts of tactics, even threaten to rape the dancers and so on and so forth.
Oh my.
Why are they doing that? Because they are very afraid of people know the China before communism. Think of for 5,000 years, China's history, communism was never rooted in China. So even in the past 7+ decades, you look at the Chinese history of communism. First, they mobilized the farmers promised the redistribution of the land after the revolution. They never did. Instead, they started food rationing, which means people's survival will be based on food. So that's how they censor. Then 10 years of Cultural Revolution.
The food as sort of a, yes, they want to, if you don't do this, you won't eat.
It's interesting because in America, all of a sudden these food starts disappearing from the shelves. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that?
Yeah, in fact, I feel like the Cultural Revolution is reliving on American soil. I personally experienced Cultural Revolution because my parents were college graduate engineers. Just because they were educated, they were sent to forced labor camps. They could not apply the engineering skills.
So your parents were in forced labor camps?
And then I was a child laborer. I grew up as a child laborer, carry fertilizers heavier than myself up to the top of the hill, grew the sugar cane. The sugar cane financed the school.
How many hours a day were you doing that?
Hours, and it took 1.5 hours by foot getting to the school.
How old were you?
I was from 7 to 9. That was when I attended school. Wow. And during harvest seasons, I have to pick up crops drop on the field because they use hand tools to harvest. So some crops drop on the field. Every day I must fill up a full bag of crops picked. Otherwise, I could not return to school the next day. And that was communism. And
it sort of sounds like, if I could say it like this, mandates, forced shutdowns. I mean, I think a lot of people in America didn't realize what was happening before their eyes, but you would have seen these things and thought, that looks very familiar. Am I not right in saying that?
Most of the American people were blinded to what you're saying.
But you had to be seeing that. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, Epoch Times has been exposing the pandemic. In fact, we broke the news about the pandemic in December 2019. At that time, there were plenty of N95 masks. And people grabbed the N95 masks, from the CVS, Walgreens. There are plenty of them at the regular price. And as we know, N95 masks are the masks that work in surgical rooms. And we have our subscribers who travel to China. Upon learning about the pandemic, they changed the return flights to early days and avoided the lockdown. And some of their relatives and colleagues did not change the flight, never make it back to USA. They die, they perish. And for COVID. In fact, COVID never stopped in China. There have been a widespread of COVID in China until now. Recently, when you see the Chinese New Year, there were empty trains and empty buses. Chinese New Year is like our Thanksgiving, family unions. People from all over the country, they want to return home to celebrate. So it's the biggest festival. Why would there be empty trains and empty buses? Because people die. And
which they weren't reporting a lot of this. This was so under the radar. Janice.
Yes.
This was horrible.
And our journalists report COVID on the ground. We send our reporters to the cemeteries. You can count how many new cemeteries.
Do they have any idea? Let me ask you this, though. Do they have any idea how many lives were lost in all of this? This cover-up, this planned thing that they were trying to do?
More than the entire population of the United States.
Are you serious? That is unbelievable.
And nobody talks about it.
Nobody talks about it.
Well, you have to think of people inside China. They are afraid. They are either self-censorship. Think of the decades of the Communist rule. First, they targeted the landlords, then they targeted the educated people, and then the students who want democracy. In 1989, they were persecuted. And in 1999, they persecuted the Falun Gong followers, which followed the values of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance, and they do 5 sets of simple exercise, Tai Chi type exercise, and then meditation exercises. The Falun Gong followers are known as the healthiest group in China. In fact, there have been 4 health surveys, each of those with sample size over 10,000. So together, over 50,000 sample sizes. The healing rate was over 94%.
Wow.
And in fact,
say that statistic again.
Over 94% healing rates.
You are kidding me.
That's why with the brutal persecution on Falun Gong, people did not give up because they found the second lives, including terminal stage of illnesses. I have 2 friends who have infertility issues. After they practice Falun Gong, they have babies. One baby became a beauty pageant.
So let me ask you this: what? And this, I know you're asking this. I can sense it. You that are viewing, what was their end game? What were they hoping to really accomplish at the end of whatever their game is that they didn't quite get away with?
Yeah. So
even though I don't think they're done.
Right now we are at the final war of good and evil. Communism and free will is 2 ends of the spectrum. Yeah. The existing of the free will is a threat to communism. Just the existence of Falun Gong practitioners who believe in truth, compassion, forbearance is a stark contrast to communistic propaganda, the lies, and the violence. That's why we saw in America
what they tried to do to discredit even what we're seeing emerging in the current administration and everything like that. They tried so hard to stop it because they realized that there was an absolute interruption and disruption coming.
Yes, and how they disrupted is by Americans Against America. There was this book that was published by the current Chinese Politburo, which is the highest committees in the country.
You're fighting among yourself.
Yes, and so all the chaos that you saw, who's behind that, who's funding them, is the Communist parties. Because Communist Party thrive on chaos, because they want them to fight with each other. And in fact, in 2003, the People Liberation Armies, the Chinese militaries, have updated manuals. They have 3 wars: psychological warfare, opinion warfare, and lawfare. So psychological warfare.
We saw all of this in America. This is crazy.
It's like reliving that. Yes. And so they also use media and YouTubers and legacy media trying to spread the propaganda.
Money and all of that funny money that was showing up in different ones. Yeah.
And then the lawfare. So take Shenyin Performing Arts that we just described. So New York Times wrote more than 11 hit pieces within 6 month periods. Why? It was all, recycle the narratives what the Chinese Communist Party. And why are they so afraid of people seeing Shen Yun as a beautiful performance that Kate Blanchett enjoy, Joshua Bell enjoy, because it showed China before communism. It wake up people
and they would say, wait a minute. Yes.
Yeah. So
that's a good.
The Epoch Times on November 19, 2004, we published the 9 commentaries of the Communist Party. For the past 20 years.
Can we go out and find that too?
Yes.
How do we do that?
Just search 9 commentaries, or you can go onto the Epoch Times.
I'm going to do that too.
Epoch Times.
Yeah.
Give people in the camera there the website.
Yes.
I want to make sure they know.
So you can go on to the epochtimes.com, and then you can search for 9 commentaries. It's free of charge. You can download the 9 commentaries, and you can also get the book. You can subscribe. You can order it from online. And the book has changed China. It has inspired 443 million Chinese withdrew from the Chinese Communist Party memberships and its affiliated organization, including the younger tiers, the youth leads, and the young pioneers. This is the book that changed China, transforming China from communistic towards a new communistic, peaceful future China, without a single bullet. Because when people wake up to see the propaganda, they see that it's a sinking Titanic. They want to get out of it. Last but not least, communism is antichrist. So it's appoint us to end communism in our time, such that religious liberties, press freedoms, freedom of expressions, internet freedoms will be available for billions of people, for all the viewers, for all people around the world.
Well, and one of the things, real quick, we saw a great victory in our country, and I want you to know this: there is a difference between Red China and China itself, and that's what people understand. That Chinese people are beautiful people, but there's a rumbling, and God's hand is on China, and I believe what's underground is going to come above ground, and we are going to be amazed at how God has heard the cry of a people who've been oppressed by Red China communist government and that spirit of Antichrist.
Well, yes. And Janice, thank you for being with us today. I hope we get to do more of this with you.
Thank you.
This would be so
pleasure.
wonderful because one of our hearts and missions is to expose the lies of the enemy
Yes.
and what he has done to it. You know, a lot of people, and I'll say this in closing, have just thought, well, you know, we just share Jesus with people, but they've not until recent times realized that part of that is standing up against evil government. And a lot of Christians in America especially have not seen that. And I think we're getting past some fears. People all over the world are being awakened to what's right so that we can bring in the last great harvest on planet
Absolutely.
Earth. And so, Janice, I really hope we can do more. Epoch Times, everybody, you need to get out there, read their stuff, get those commentaries that she said, educate yourself on what God is doing. We think they're amazing, and I know you'll be blessed. Well, OVTV partners, remember, it is because of you that we are able to take the word of the Lord all over the world. And if you need prayer, you can go to hankandbrenda.org and know this, there's somebody always there ready and willing to pray with you. Until next time, we love you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
This is OVTV. Be encouraged, be inspired, be blessed. One Voice TV.